Before we get started on the training, I just want to give a brief intro, ground us a bit as to why we're here. Um, and yeah, and then we'll kick it off. Again, Nancy with Stop the Money Pipeline, really to share space today with some of our JEDI team, our partners at National Day Labor Organizing Network, who will be leading us through this training. As all of us are experiencing across the country, right, we're continuing to see a rise in xenophobia. ICE detentions are ramping up. We're seeing the construction of new detention facilities, specifically in South Florida right now in the Everglades, a temporary detention center given that there is no more space. So we're really thinking about the families who are being affected, the people who are in limbo in these detention centers, and why Stop the Money Pipeline is really meeting this moment by co-hosting our three-part series, Immigration Justice Must Be a Climate Fight Too, to bring in climate activists and others who want to get more involved, right? Who are trying to find out like how you can take deeper action and be in solidarity with immigrant and migrant communities across the country. And as well, we're seeing, right, some of this horrendous behavior through the federal government. We're also really inspired by the communities across the country who are protesting these immigration policies and putting their bodies on the line to stop family separations. ICE has become synonymous with the Gestapos of years ago, who are deporting and terrorizing families. These, we see these headlines depicting these stories, but we also see plenty of headlines depicting the masses of people who are showing up to protect communities and are fighting back. And that's why we're really honored to be partnering today with the National Day Labor Organizing Network, known as NDLON, who are organizing and training at this very moment, right? People all over the country to lead ICE Out campaigns, and also walk us through how we can adopt a day labor corner in our communities. And that's would be the focus of our workshop today. We'll have time at the end of the workshop to answer any questions, hear from you. Yeah, we want you, we day laborers and immigrants in your town or city. So again, thanks for joining us. I'm going to hand it over now to our friends, Ericandiola and Calzoto and Endelon.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And everybody can hear me? Yeah, good, good, awesome. And so I'm gonna get us started, but thank you all for being here. I've been doing some of these as panels or webinars, so I can't see everyone's face. And so it's really nice to see a bunch of people joining us in person and sharing this time. Nancy's right. This has been a really challenging crisis, a moment of crisis because of the attacks on immigrant communities. I'm joining you from Pasadena, California, here in Los Angeles, from the Pasadena Community Job Center. And I'm going to talk to you today about, like we just said, what we're going through, what we're experiencing in terms of this attack. We are going to talk about how we can help folks get involved. But I'm going to start from a place of climate change and how it is directly related to this moment that we're facing right now. And if you can, we can go to the next slide real quick, just so to acknowledge, this is our many logos of NDLON that you saw there, with the many programs that we have, and we'll touch on some of them, but we are a multifaceted organization that we'll get into. But really quickly, going through the agenda for today, we're going to start the most basic point on what is the day labor. We're the National Day Labor Organizing Network, so we have a short video on that, in Spanish, jornalero or jornalere, jornalera. Second, we're going to talk about NDLON, who we are, the National Day Labor Organizing Network. Then why immigration is a climate fight, this current moment, and how it connects to climate justice. Our organizing approach we'll touch on, and then we'll move to a call to action, what it means to join Adopt a Day Labor Corner, the program, the steps to adopting a day labor corner or adopting a corner, and the tips that we have for adopting and defending those corners. And finally, we'll have some ability for you to get engaged immediately, sign up in the next steps and answer some questions. So like I said, I'm going to start from the basic level, and we're going to build from there. Just so you know where we're going, we will get into ICE Out. I have many ICE Out materials here that you'll be able to see. And I love sharing these signs because they're sort of where we're going. We want everybody to be joining these different ICE out programs and to create your own local program as well. We are very much, and we don't touch on this explicitly during the presentation, but we believe in open source sort of campaigns and how we can share materials so that we can grow quickly. We need to move fast. So that's part of how we're working these days. So the next slide. And actually, the next slide is a video produced by, before you start it really quickly, produced by our local community radio, Radio Jornalera. That's day labor radio in Spanish. And it's something you can find on Facebook or YouTube. I'm actually here steps away from the cabina, the studio for Radio Jornalera. And I encourage you all to connect to find out more information on a day-to-day basis desde abajo, from the base, from day laborers themselves. So here's Manuel Vicente, the director of Radio Jornalera, talking about what it means to be a day laborer.
What is a day labor? Day laborers are workers that work and get paid on a day-to-day basis. Every day, they work for different employers and at different assignments. They can be found in many industries, but most often work in demolition, construction, gardening, painting, and light manufacturing. You can have a day labor in a job center, temporary agency, or on designated street. A day laborer will negotiate their own wages and working conditions. Day laborers are workers who face vulnerable circumstances, but also organize and fight back against wage theft, discrimination, police abuse, and other forms of harassment. Through day labor and advocacy, as a community, they have made many valuable contributions to U.S. society.
Thank you. And so before we move forward, just to give a quick introduction of who I am, why I'm connected here. My name's Caleb Soto. I am the Workers' Rights Coordinator with the National Day Labor Organizing Network, and I'm an attorney supporting our organizing programs. NDLON is an organization that was founded in 2001. And we believe in this lemma. You see it behind here. It's the one logo we didn't have up there, but it's been our motto for many years, but especially over the last few months. Solo el pueblo salva el pueblo, which means only the people can save the people, or only the community can save the community. And what that means to us in so many different contexts is that nobody is going to come and save us, but also that nobody can really speak directly to the issues, the needs, and the abilities of the community, affected community. And so we can't have other people coming in and speaking for us. And I think that that's such a strong principle for us, and it definitely goes for many other organizing campaigns for day laborers, domestic workers, restaurant workers, gardeners, many low-wage immigrant workers. There has often been this model of other people maybe feeling like they needed to come in and save a community. And what the result of that was that there was actually less ability for workers themselves to speak up, less actual addressing of the issues that are on the ground happening day to day. And so solo el pueblo salva el pueblo means that we're going to come and support our work, and we're going to make sure that we create space for allies to join us so that we're shoulder to shoulder working together. And so that's a principle that is a starting point for everyone who comes in and joins the network and starts to work with us. We believe in being led by the base, and we also believe in creating space so that people are able to grow, take on leadership, and make sure that we're accompanying others who aren't as accustomed, maybe are nervous or aren't used to the organizing work that we do, that they're able to have a pathway into it. And so, yeah, we've been founded 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago now, and we now represent a network of over 72 worker centers all over the country, and a few in Latin America as well. So moving forward. Our mission here, it's very clear that we are working to improve the lives of day laborers, migrant and low-wage workers, and we build leadership and power among those facing injustice so that they can challenge inequality, expand labor, civil, and political rights for everyone. And the we here is day laborers, workers, immigrant workers. And so that last photo that we saw on the previous slide was outside of the center I'm in right now during the Eaton fire response, which we'll talk about a lot more in a moment. Here, we're, I think, in Herald Square in downtown New York, where you can see the Jornaleros del Norte, the day labor band, and many of our members holding space. At that point, it was this last June, confronting a lot of the anti-immigrant rhetoric that was in the political discourse. That's only grown since then. We are hoping to build that power amongst our community so that people, one, can recognize the industry that is so valuable and vital to the community, but also that folks around us can see the essential role played by these workers in the day-to-day lives that they live, and aren't able to sort of overlook, that work in a sense, so that it's invisibilized in many ways. So if we move to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about our kind of organizing principles. And this isn't everything. Could be its own many hours, many days, I think, kind of training. But we'll start from some of the tools that we use here. A core organizing principle for us and what leads us in our day-to-day work is the idea of popular education. I have a quote from Paulo Freire, who is a philosopher, writer, and think educator himself, who wrote extensively about what this means. And this quote to me is so instructive day to day on how I engage and how I come into communities when we're building ally networks. And so nobody knows everything. Everyone knows something. Everyone is ignorant of something. So we're always learning. And the theory here on a very basic level, because we can go much more deeply into this, is that nobody is taking the quote unquote formal and traditional role of leader or teacher in this classroom setting. When we're talking about trainings, when we're talking about how we can share advice and learn, it's always a sharing process. It's always back and forth. There's two ways, I guess, to every conversation and to every training that we do. And that means that everyone needs to have access to the information that you are sort of working through, but also needs to have ability to contribute from where they are. So oftentimes for our materials, we want to make sure that it's in a number of different languages, that there's language access, that there's access to people who maybe can't even look at certain text and read it, but can understand it through visual learning and through visual media. And so you have some examples of some of the artwork, and you'll see in the world many of the posters that we've either worked on or sponsored. And these works are not just beautiful pieces of art. They're ways that people can engage and start to analyze the world around them and then contribute to that analysis as well. And so this, I guess we can go to the next slide to talk about our organizing approach, but this is a central principle as we're working with communities. And that means our day labor community, also means our allies who come to join us. We want to make sure everyone has that equal footing to contribute, but also to learn. And we expect people to be open to that as well when they're coming in to work with us. Our organizing approach, here's three strong principles that especially today are really important for us to continue to repeat. First is nonviolence. We are committed to defending the rights of day laborers, doing so through peaceful resistance. We are led by people like Gandhi, by Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez. That doesn't mean that we don't believe in dynamic and useful tension. But what that does mean is that we are following those footsteps and not aggressing and not trying to cause that tension where it's not, needed. But that does mean we do take the streets sometimes. That does mean we do show peaceful resistance by expressing and exercising our First Amendment rights to the greatest extent possible. And in this day and age, I think it's so important to utilize that, but it's also important to move in a nonviolent way, especially as allies. And that is because there is less vulnerability sometimes for folks who are approaching to support day laborers or to support immigrant workers. And we never want our actions to put folks in more danger and greater harm. You know, we are trying to use ourselves, and then maybe you come from a place of privilege and you do feel that like ability to confront. We want to use that in a way that makes people safer and that makes people, that builds their rights. And so that's a big part of our reason why nonviolence is so key for us. Solidarity, not charity. Actually, it says it right here. Solidarity, not charity. We talk a lot about the spectrum that often immigrant rights falls into, where we call it, on one side we have right-wing hate-filled people, anti-immigrant rhetoric that is full of hate. On the other side, though, sometimes you have people who see immigrants as a group of people that deserve pity. That we're so sorry that this is happening. But in that spectrum, there isn't that space for the agency and the humanity of the people who, you know, you're trying to, if you want to support, or if you're a hater, you just want to, you know, attack. Both sides are discounting that humanity. And so we want people to understand that this is a movement. It's not a service organization. And everyone, just like we talked about in the theory of popular education, that everyone can learn, everyone has something to contribute. But we're not going to win and move forward if we're not like acknowledging that we're all like linked arm in arm. Like nobody is leading, pulling me up, and I'm not pulling anybody else up. We're all pulling up together. And there's no way for us to sort of move forward if we don't have that principle. And that's, again, we bring in solo el pueblo, sabla el pueblo. And finally, that our struggle comes from below. Desde abajo, sometimes we say. Desde abajo se defiende todo el mundo. From the bottom, we are going to defend the entire world. And I think that's a very, it's just a true statement. It's not just a beautiful, like, trying to be poetic. We've seen that the workers who are on the front lines obviously are the most vulnerable, are most under attack because of how visible they have become, either rhetorically in politics or just because they're standing out in the corner looking for work, like many day laborers do. But that said, that means that we cannot ever be saying, oh, we're going to step in and intervene for people who are on the front line defending our rights. Because to be quite honest, we've seen it. I'm a labor rights attorney, so I'm constantly telling people, well, the people who are setting the boundaries of what we have as workers, like the rights that we can expect, are the ones who are filing wage claims for their days of pay that they're not paid, which happens so frequently, are the ones who are saying, hey, I'm not getting the personal protection equipment that the law is mandating that you should provide. It's those workers who are day to day needing to go to these agencies or file in court or just go to their employers and demand publicly that we expect these rights. Because frankly, that's where a lot of the law is actually determined in those kinds of cases. But outside of the courts themselves, that's where we see if somebody doesn't have a minimum wage because their rights can be trampled, then none of us are going to have access to that minimum wage. And that goes for many labor rights. That goes even more now for our constitutional rights. And so the people who are confronting racist, but also unconstitutional searches and seizures right now are immigrant workers, those that are defending our 14th Amendment right, that everybody has equal rights under the Constitution. The law currently are immigrant brothers and sisters. And so we need to be led by people who are there on the front lines. They're there every day. They've already been there. And you might be coming new, or you might feel like you've been like trying to support for a long time. People who are in it, they've been swimming, they swim in it every day. And there's so much knowledge, a depth of knowledge and understanding of humanity there. And I think a lot of folks here on the call are on the same page, but I maybe I'm repeating myself a lot, but that's such an important key to even entering this work. Um, so I'm going to start actually jump into how this relates to climate change, but I just wanted to pause. I don't know, I have been speaking a lot. I know we don't have like an open like call for questions or anything till the end, but just in case there's someone else on my panel or that wanted to jump in or enter, or I often get uncomfortable when I talk for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a time. You can just give me a thumbs up or put a keep going, Cal, in the chat, and I'll feel great.
Keep it going. You're doing awesome. Thank you.
Let's go. Great. Awesome. Because now I'm going to get a little more technical, just a little bit. So the next slide, you may be asking, or maybe I was asking even when I was invited to join in here. It's like, okay, climate change and the work that we're doing right now, the raids, these incredible attacks, like how do those relate? And this is a place where I feel with the recent experiences that we've had here in Pasadena, but also over the many years of work with NDLON, I've been given this opportunity to learn so much about how work, labor, climate justice, and economic justice are all sort of overlapping in ways that you can't separate them. Even though we like to put ourselves in different buckets, on one side, when there's a hurricane, I've seen directly how that affects on the other side, wage theft, immigration, migration, and how eventually that leads to the rights of workers on all levels. So we're starting from immigrant workers as second responders, and that's a term of art that I believe somebody here at NDLON at one point created, but I don't quote me on that. That's what we call workers who come in to an area after a natural disaster or a man-made disaster, after the first responders, emergency workers like Red Cross or others have, Army Corps have come in and done the remediation work. These workers are the essential piece of both removing debris and then rebuilding our communities. There's no rebuilding, no resiliency without immigrant workers. So if you go to every single natural disaster over the last 20 years, in my lifetime, over the last 30 years, you'll see as a key piece of the rebuilding effort, immigrant workers who respond. Sometimes they have moved to an area to be able to get work. Many times it's just recruitment from local workers to be able to quickly get a lot of skilled construction workers into an area to rebuild. This specific picture you're seeing is a group of workers who after the, yes, exactly. We can go back to COVID as well. Sorry, just saw your comment. I'm not seeing all the comments, but occasionally I'm seeing them. That's exactly right. Even the term, I mean, we sort of have a love-hate relationship to the term essential worker. I think it's sort of taken on its own like life and its own meaning, and we do see this work as essential. And during COVID, the frontline workers who had to keep going, many of them, the nurses, the food workers, delivery workers, but a lot of day laborers, domestic workers, they never got any kind of stimulus or hazard pay. And we know that they ended up being infected with COVID at high rates. So anyway, to move forward, just to explain this picture, this is a group of workers who volunteered after the Eden fires here in Pasadena. 10 blocks away right now from where the fire line came up in Altadena and Pasadena. And this center became a key relief center for both providing food distribution for people who had lost everything, but also as a response of workers to clean the streets and support neighbors here that didn't have access to be able to clean their own driveways. We had an immediate response of workers to come out, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to point this out because this is one of the truck drivers, the troqueros as we call them, this large hauling vehicle that I think it can carry 3,000 or 4,000 pounds, like a number of tons. We moved 20,000 tons of debris over a month. The city said that they wouldn't be able to move to clean the streets that are immediately blocked after the fires and the Santa Ana winds that caused a lot of those fires. They said it would take 2 months for them to remove all the debris. And these workers came in 2 weeks, or like cleaned up all the streets, and then went in to start cleaning up neighbors' homes. These same workers, these truck drivers, came from a specific corner in Glendale that just 4 days ago was raided by ICE. And they arrested 15 workers. And friends and colleagues of these workers here are currently in detention after volunteering for 2 months to help rebuild the city. So just a note, we're getting to how this all plays together. It is an outrage, exactly. We can move to the next slide, and this will be quickly on the next piece. If it's video, it might be a video, and we can pass over this one if it doesn't come up. Yeah, don't worry about the video. I think I meant it to just be the picture. The image that you can't see though is a screenshot from a KTLA helicopter footage, and what you'd see was a group of day laborers with their hoses pointed at fires approaching very wealthy homes in the Palisades. And that's, for many people, that's how they defended themselves against the fire. They called day laborers, had workers come and clean literally as the fire is approaching. So not only are day laborers second responders, they're also first responders in many cases. So we can move forward. Exactly. I see, there you go. So you can sort of see the image, and that's these small group of people that are on the street, that where their hand is, those are workers. Those are jornaleros, they're day laborers. And as it gets closer, you realize they're pointing just hoses at this massive fire that's encroaching upon their properties there. So yeah. You can read a lot about this. We've done a lot of an analysis on this. So I just wanted to put this out there. These are studies after Hurricane Sandy, after Hurricane Harvey in Houston and New Orleans. And the next the next slide is after Hurricane, I believe, Ida in Florida. All of these are bringing really clear data, actually discussions where we have these surveys with workers on day labor corners about the work they're doing in the weeks after a hurricane or wildfire or other natural disaster. And the data is clear that immigrant workers are the ones that are showing up to rebuild our communities. This is an article from after the Eaton fire, and you can look up a little bit more if you wanted to read. I think a good amount of reporting was done, thankfully, about that response. But hundreds of day laborers and immigrant workers, I'd say, came here to the center, volunteered their time cleaning up the streets, volunteered their time packing despensas, packs of food, essentials for people coming to get support, volunteered their time distributing that on every day for at least a month, longer than that as well. From the day the fires came on January 7th, 6th or 7th, for the 2 months after that. Many of those same workers are neighbors here. They live in Pasadena. They themselves were affected, but they showed up because they love their community and they love their neighbors and wanted to use the tools that they had to support. And so that was just an example of a community support, but it's also the case that the workers who are currently being hired by contractors to clean Palisades, to rebuild the Palisades, to clean Altadena, Pasadena, rebuild Altadena, Pasadena, are also immigrant workers. And if day laborers get hired constantly to go to these jobs, we've done a lot of work, the next slide, to help train workers, to bring really great essential PPE. This is not a fire PPE kit. I know that because it doesn't have a P100 mask, a specific level of mask. But this is from after one of the hurricanes. But we have a cohort of here. Actually, you can go to the next slide. It's great. This is some of our trainers, and I've seen one of our trainers there. The metal who, this is many years ago. He looks very young in this picture, which is very funny to me. And he was a day laborer who was trained at one point in OSHA, had a 10-hour OSHA course, was super engaged and really interested in, well, how are we giving this information to other people? We learned through this project that there were very few Spanish language trainers, and even fewer, if any, former day laborers or domestic workers that were OSHA OSHA authorized trainers. And so we started a project of training the trainer and making sure that the workers who had that both experience and the desire to grow in this field had an opportunity to do that. And so today we have at least 50, I think it's more, and my numbers are low, authorized trainers in OSHA 10-hour in both construction and general industry. And also some of those are OSHA 30-hour trained, and many of those are also in line to take even more detailed trainings. Here in Pasadena, right after the fires, we had a train the trainer program that was able to train almost 200 workers in the weeks after the training in site safety, specifically for natural disasters. And so these programs, obviously, one on a first line is how are we preparing workers to protect themselves? They go to jobs are much higher rate of incidents of death and other serious incidents on the jobs in immigrant workers. When you parse that out, immigrant workers are way more likely to face deaths from falls, from entrapment, from breathing in chemicals, and are much more likely to have long-term health effects because of on-the-job issues. And so this was a response to that, a response to what we've the experience of Katrina and Sandy, where we realized that immigrant workers they're responding and then they're staying and becoming victims of wage theft and victims of these health issues. But it became this organizing tool. It's like, oh, the best way to pass on this information in an exponential way was arming workers themselves with valuable information that they'd never heard before, or like were told that was like not worth their time. Getting an understanding of, yeah, I have felt unsafe on the job pretty much every time I've gone to work. Many workers end up sharing that, but nobody ever told me I could even have a mask. Nobody ever told me that it was my employer's responsibility to give me the mask. And that response of almost like indignation that you see like turns into a fire to, I need to tell everybody I know about this, and I need to give the best information possible. And I know exactly the best way to communicate that with my coworkers. And so without some OSHA person at some point or an NIHS person saying like, hey, we can open up this training program to your folks and create a pathway, we would never have gotten there. So it's like, I'm acknowledging the importance of allies, but the importance of being able to create a pathway to like be armed with that knowledge and then utilize it. So this is a great picture to me. I love seeing this. And this is a group of workers. This is many years old, but yeah, we can go to the next. In that group, I'm seeing people who went on to open their own worker centers, went on to start their own training programs, who have now trained hundreds, if not thousands of workers. So, I mean, the response is absolutely incredible. So here, what are we looking at? Oh, wait, we can go back. I think I'm missing. Looking one more slide or two more slides. Back 2 more slides, my bad. Right there. Okay, so we're gonna get to Adopt a Day Labor Corner. I just wanted to note this. When we were starting visiting and speaking to workers, I mean, the best thing to do is just to approach with humbly, but get to know people. It's like we're weird these days about speaking to each other. And I just want to acknowledge before we're getting to like, oh, call to action, how people can really get involved, that I'm here, I'm this guy with a ponytail, I had long hair then, that these things are scary to me. So like, oh, I don't go and talk to strangers, like just generally. And when I'm first starting, this doesn't feel like, it feels a little unnatural at first. One, I would say that it's so necessary right now. It's worth it to break through that that tension. I just want to acknowledge and say like, yeah, it's true. I feel it even still sometimes. But now is the time to try to fight that, I guess is what I'd say. Two, it's like it's so important to do this in person. You know, I know it's great that we have this technology to connect all across the world, and that's its own benefit and amazing. But there's no way to connect with and to make sure that you're checking in on workers who might be vulnerable if you're not going out there in person. And so hopefully we're able to give you some tools today to be able to feel like, okay, maybe I can get started or I can join some people to go do that. But I just wanted to not put a point on this. All right, let's go forward a few, you know. We're like, oh, we're gonna be like really quick. And I'm like, I'm really milking the time. Let's trying to do that. I'll just explain these pictures really quickly and then we'll get to the call to action. This is, as I said, this is a picture of workers starting to line up at like 7 a.m. here in Pasadena. And these are folks who are about to put on an orange shirt that says Solo el pueblo salva el pueblo, like Pasadena Fire Brigade. And they're going to get out on the streets. And all these are day laborers and allies who came like with their tools, ready to work and jump in. And it's this incredible moment that was captured. And we have a bunch of these stories now. You can keep going. This sort of, I love to show our logos. Again, then here's allies. I guess it's sort of like we kept doing this and it kept getting bigger and bigger. One weekend we had thousands, 1,000 volunteers a day. I think it was Martin Luther King Day weekend. And so that's an incredible community response. It gave us a little hope in a moment of really deep, like hurt. I think but two, so here we go. Because we had that connection, and I think that in many ways, it's this silver lining, I would say, not to say that the fires has been horrific and the result was horrific, but we have been set up in the context here in Pasadena to be able to activate so many more people that had never even heard of a day labor, or never even heard of the center, even though they lived right next door. And I think because of that, what you're seeing here is just a couple of weeks ago, there were arrests of, I would say, kidnappings of at least 4 workers outside of a grocery store where day laborers gather. That evening, the response was a vigil, and the community, many of them had volunteered with us or themselves were affected during the fires, came out to show that the community there in this corner wasn't alone. We blocked the streets and had a little vigil, protest, and as always, a dance for justice that we usually do. And so the next slide is another example of that's the invitation to that vigil. And it's become this broad call to action. And this isn't new. I don't want to act like brand new on this. ICE Out has been a call to action for a long time. And so many people, youth organizers, immigrant youth organizers have carried that message and that campaign, that fight, all the way through to be able to have, for example, here in this state, many more protections than other states here in California, you know, and that's happened in other states as well. And so I just want to share that that's why I have all these signs. We've recently been trying to like get people to start their own ICE Out campaigns. And a part of the call to action will be how you can get involved in that. But most importantly, and like what's I think immediately apparent and needed is how are we taking care of these same day labor corners, the informal hiring sites, which are often Home Depots? How are we supporting them now that they need allies when they supported us? Here in Pasadena, that's a very clear example, but that's all over the country. I know the work that's been done for many years by immigrant workers. And so now the call to action is how can we get out of our bubble sometimes, and maybe you're not in that bubble, but how can we just get out there and connect with people? And I hope that we have some tools and some things that you can use to do that. So yeah, Erica.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Cal. That was so much history and yeah, no, you did a great job. Hi, everyone. I'm Erica. I am based here in Arizona in the Phoenix area. I'm the political director for NDLON. And I'm gonna go to this next slide. to talk about the call to action. So I just want to read this quote real quick. This is from Paula Alvarado, who's our one of our co-executive directors, before I talk about what we can do. And he says, this moment demands more than watching. It demands that we show up for one another in person, non-violently, with courage, with love, and with urgency. If you're not at risk of deportation, we are asking you to consider taking action today. So with that spirit, we're going to the next slide and we can tell you what that action could be. So I have a few things here that you can do, and I'm gonna go deeper into the last two, but the first three are pretty easy things to do if you are just wanting to do something tomorrow or this weekend or next week. One is share the stories that you have heard today, right? I saw on the chat this really anger, my dogs are starting to bark, apologies. The anger, sadness of knowing that the same people who were rebuilding LA, right, parts of LA, are the ones that are being deported right now. That's a story you can talk to your neighbor about, to your cousin, to your father, whoever, right? Tell them that story, because a lot of people who don't even know where they stand on immigration, it's because they don't really know these stories. Number two, print a sign. I'm gonna share a link on the chat of signs that we have created already for our Ice Out campaign. And a lot of times, honestly, it's just showing up to a protest. I know there's been a lot of protests that have already been happening in the community, like the No Kings protests, etc. That you just have to show up with a handful of signs. Maybe if you have more resources, print like 100 of them, give them out, and you can have a presence there of community members really saying, not here, not in my city, not in my county, ICE out of LA, ICE out of Phoenix, etc. Number three, and that's something that we can be doing literally as soon as we end this call, is calling your representative. That's an easy one. Now I'm going to go into some that require a little bit more solidarity. So adopting a corner and also potentially starting an ICE out of my community campaign. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So what does it mean to adopt a day labor corner? Now we already heard and learned what day laborers are and who they are, what they do. I want to ask if you can put on the chat if any of you have ever seen or have driven by a day labor corner. Have you ever seen a day labor in your community? If you have, can you put it in the chat? I'm just curious. How many of you have actually seen any day laborers in your corner? Okay, there's a few folks. Okay, yeah, the Home Depot. I think most of us have seen workers at the Home Depot. Okay, amazing. So some of you have seen some of the workers in your community. So now that you have either stopped by Home Depot or driven by one of these corners, so one of the things that you can do, it's really committing to being a neighbor, an ally, and basically a community member supporting a place where the day laborers gather to seek work. We are asking for solidarity to protect their rights, to prevent abuses towards them, and to also strengthen the fabric of the community in general. The next slide. So here are very practical next steps that we are suggesting for people to adopt the corner. So one, I'm gonna go a little bit deeper into each step, but just quickly here is one, to locate first a day labor corner. And some of you on the chat already have located some of those corners or the Home Depots or other stores where they might gather. Number two, forming a small group that can be basically your support group that can go and start working with in the corner with the workers. Number three, creating a calendar for visits. Number four, visiting for the first time. We're gonna tell you what to take with your visit. And then number five, being ready to create a rapid response team in case something happens, with an ICE raid at one of these corners or stores. Next slide. So step number one, locating the corner. These we call them corners, but a lot of times, as you mentioned, it could be a Home Depot, it could be a Lowe's, could be other hardware stores in your community. So you could, drive around those if you have not yet located or seen where some of the workers gather. They could also be around gas stations like 7-Eleven. In some areas, they could be by delis. Some day labor corners or centers already are doing organizing work. If you know that that's happening, we definitely encourage you to reach out to the day labor center to make sure that you're not duplicating work, but that you're rather introducing yourselves to them and making sure that you are getting involved in that work. Okay, we're gonna go to the next slide. Step number 2. Forming a small group. This is a pretty, well, it sounds easy in theory, but it might be a little bit hard, right? Getting a group of people, it could literally be 3 people getting together and starting with, organizing yourselves and thinking about how together you can start locating these corners or having those conversations. So let's form those small groups. And then step number 3 on the next slide is creating a calendar with your small group to visit the corners. It's important to note that day laborers start working very early, which the government never wants to talk about how much workers do and how much it's a sacrifice sometimes to wake up at 4 a.m. to go to work, but they do it every day. So just be conscious that workers start sometimes working between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. So if you do create a schedule with your group to want to go visit, it could be around those times. And then you can start creating a calendar with shifts on to be able to go to the corner. And the next step, we can tell you what to take. So now that you have your group, you have created a calendar with your group on visiting the corners or the stores. These are some things that we are suggesting that you can start with. Wearing a name tag, or potentially if you're part of an organization, you can wear the shirt of your organization. Something that really shows that, because there's so much fear in our community right now, something that shows that you are part of a community, that you're not part of ICE, that you're there really to help and support. So wearing a name tag could be one of those ways, or a t-shirt about your organization. One thing that's been really great, that a lot of people have already been doing this, says that works, is bringing coffee and donuts or Mexican bread or Salvadorian bread, whatever is around your area, that you can come and offer the workers as a way to start the conversation with them. And then also bringing materials. So bringing your know your rights cards, if you know where you can find those. And we also have some on our toolkit. We're going to be sharing information about personal safety, as Carl was mentioning earlier. A lot of times workers don't have this information already. Things like the equipment they could be using, etc. A lot of those materials you're going to be able to find in our toolkit as well. And then bringing in some of your, I'm assuming here that some of you might already be in the know about rapid response hotlines that exist in your community. So if you know of a rapid response hotline, you can also bring those numbers to the workers, right? To make sure that they have that information available to them. If you don't have a rapid response hotline, or you don't know of one, you can email us, and if we do have that information. We don't have information for everything happening around the country, because there's so much, but if we do, we're happy to provide that. And then the last thing is, we have, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be popping the link of our toolkit in the chat so that you can go in there and actually have a little bit more information on what you could potentially bring into your visit. So the last step here is being ready to actually do rapid response with the workers. So you already have a little group, you already went to the corner, you met the workers, you brought in donuts and coffee, you started those conversations. Perhaps you want to start a rapid response signal group with with your small team. Um, we've already seen this being done in LA. One of my friends actually started a group for one of the Home Depots, and unfortunately, it just so happened that right after she took the training and put together the little group, it might have been like 2 or 3 days after it happened, that Home Depot in LA was raided. So they got firsthand experience on how creating a little signal group with the folks who went and volunteered to talk to the workers allowed for them to be present, to go right away into the Home Depot when the raid was happening, and they were able to get the information from the workers before they were taken, which was very important because as we see right now, ICE is disappearing people, and a lot of times the families can't really find them. So they were able to get information from the workers to call their families and let them know that had happened. We also have a lot of materials and information that we're not going to go over in this 1 hour we have, but that you will find on our toolkit. And then we're going to continue to have other trainings on other ways in which you can do rapid response with the corner or the store and the workers that are there. So those are the 5 steps that we are suggesting if you would like to create some form of solidarity group with to be able to adopt a workers' corner. Go to the next slide. So we're organized already. You might say, I already have a group. Like I just need to tell them to go to the corner. I don't need to start from scratch, and maybe I'm already going into some of these corners and to the Home Depots to work with jornaleros or the day laborers. So what else can I do? So one thing that a lot of groups are doing in California and some around the country now, here in Phoenix as well, is organizing ICE at a Home Depot protest. Why is this? Well, as we have seen, literally, Steve Miller, who you all know who he is, he's been really focused on terrorizing our communities. He literally said, we're gonna go and raid Home Depots, right? We're gonna go to Home Depot and we're gonna take workers. So we want to ensure that Home Depot is being held accountable in how they're allowing ICE to go into their stores and basically taking workers from their parking lots, taking workers from the actual stores. And we want to make sure that we start from the place of, first, of course, if there are workers in the Home Depot, that we can start those conversations and start working in solidarity with those with the workers. But there might be Home Depots around your area that don't even have workers there, right? There might be just Home Depots that might be even easier to show up and do a protest, or you could even start from just doing a petition or a sign-on letter in the community that you can take to the Home Depot. So the idea here, and again, because we don't have a ton of time to go deep into like different tactics, but the idea here is that we can ensure that Home Depot, as a company that has literally been called out by Steve Miller as a company that's going to be targeted, that they are coming out and publicly saying that they will protect the immigrant community, that they will not allow ICE into their parking lots. So that's another way to take action. There is a website now for that campaign. It's right there, the iceoutofhomedepot.net. There's already been some amazing actions have happened. There's one photo there of the Pasadena protest that happened with teachers. Teachers showed up after they did their Adopt a Corner work, and they realized that they had to escalate the pressure on Home Depot, and they showed up with signs and did an amazing protest and got lots of media coverage, as you can see. Next slide. Okay, so what else? What else can we do? Well, here's the thing. ICE has so many ways to terrorize our community, as you all know. Yes, one, for us, it's very important that we are protecting day laborers because it is our constituency. There's the people that we work with, right? The workers. But there's also a lot of families, a lot of people who are being targeted around the country. And one way to try to limit the way in which ICE can go into our communities is to limit how they work with local police. ICE, for many, many years now, has been able to create contracts and uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Agreements with local law enforcement. Could be with sheriffs, could be with local police. So what we want to make sure is that we are also pressuring and making our voices heard anywhere we live to ensure that those localities, whether it's our city, whether it's our county, whether it's our state, are not cooperating with those agreements, that they are not working with ICE and with the federal agencies targeting immigrants to terrorize our communities. There are many reasons for that. Of course, one is ensuring that we are protecting our immigrant neighbors and families. But the other is that we don't want for our people not to feel safe, Americans, right, in general, to not to feel so unsafe that they can't even go out the door because not only ICE but the police could also be coming to racial profile them or to take them from their families. So one of the campaigns we have had for many years now at NDLON is the ICE Out campaign, or ICE Out of our communities, which is basically trying to, create sanctuary localities, whether it's California, as an example, was a sanctuary state that was created because of the work of NDLON and many other organizations pushing the state to end the collaboration with ICE. But you could also even focus on your own city, right? If your city does have agreements with the police, the sheriff, or the county might have a sheriff collaborating with ICE. You can start by learning about those agreements and then escalating to perhaps, creating a petition against it and eventually really organizing the community to push back on those agreements and those contracts. I'm oversimplifying this for the purposes of time, but it's one idea to just like a seed to plant in your imagination on the tools that you can use to support the immigrant community right now. So the next slide. This is one example. We were so proud of our Iowa member organization of NDLON, Escucha Mi Voz. And they, because they had their actual community members, they were going to work one day and they got stopped by the sheriff, the local sheriff in Iowa, one of the local sheriffs. And the actual sheriff took the workers. They were going to work. The sheriff took the workers, and the workers ended up in ICE custody because of the collaboration that ICE had with a sheriff. So after that happened, the community got together and they started a campaign. This, as you can see, this is one of the tactics that they used. They collected 800 signatures and they delivered them to the State Patrol, demanding that they ended the ICE task force program, which is one of those agreements that the sheriff had with ICE. The 287G agreement, if any of you know or have an understanding of what that is, but it's just basically a way for ICE to work with a sheriff, to ensure the sheriffs are the ones, doing the work for ICE. So what happened? It worked. They won. The sheriff decided to end the collaboration with ICE in Iowa. It was in California. It wasn't in Oregon or Washington. This was Iowa. So it can be done, and we're definitely encouraging you, if you have organizations or want to start a campaign in your own community to do this. It can definitely be done, and it works. Next slide. We're almost done here, This is the last suggestion. This is from an organization that loves to use culture, art, and joy in our movement. As Kyle shared in the beginning, there was a lot of different logos. One of the logos is for Los Jornaleros del Norte, who you heard the song when we started the session. The Jornaleros del Norte are literally a band that started at NDLON. One of our co-directors is part of the band, and they show up to every protest in LA and Pasadena, and a lot of times turn, protests that are filled with anger and sadness into protests that are filled with joy and dance. And it's, we remind ourselves and the community that they can do a lot against us. They can try to terrorize us, but they cannot take joy from us. We can't let them take joy from us. So definitely look up the band. As I mentioned, there was a link to the YouTube to the song. But even if you're in your own communities, bring music, bring art, work with local artists to make sure that we are bringing that joy and the culture and art into our protests and our actions. Next slide, and I think is the last one. This is a toolkit. If our folks could share. Oh, Nancy did. So, and Nancy on the chat just share the link to the Adopt Daily Work Corner toolkit. Also, Cal just shared the link for the Jornaleros del Norte, the group I just mentioned, and the song that we played earlier. And so please use the toolkit. And we also, the last thing here is we have a sign up. If you do want to start a group to adopt a corner, it is in the toolkit as well, but I just popped it into the chat. We are asking people to sign up if you are interested on adopting a corner and creating a solidarity group that can show up for immigrant workers and with day laborers. I'm going to stop there. I try to go as fast as I could, but I would love to open it up for questions, maybe for the next, Nancy, maybe the next, 10 minutes, and then we can close.
Yeah, that works. Thanks so much. If people have questions, you can raise your hand or drop the question in the chat. We'll give it a few minutes. If we don't need all the 10 minutes, that's okay too. But yeah, really grateful for this workshop training from NDLON. I'll put myself on mute, but yeah, you raise your hand or drop a question in the chat.
Yeah, there's a really good point here I see in the chat from Suzanne about Suzanne, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right. But yeah, how do we show up to the corners without potentially insulting someone, or if they might be citizens, right? And trying to figure out those dynamics. I wonder if Cal, you've done a lot of this, so I don't know if you have some tips there for ensuring that, workers don't feel offended in
Yeah.
any way, type of
I
thing.
mean, yeah. And I think that one of the things from that question is to recognize that you don't have to really even broach the subject. I mean, you can go and bring really important materials right now, especially more than ever. People are accepting red cards that know their rights. Those are the rights, immigrant or not, those are our rights. And we all really should know our Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and how to interact with police. In my experience, if you come humbly, and that means from a place of I just want to get to know where you're at, and I want to make sure you're okay, safe. And if somebody's not receptive, you just move on and don't, it's not that big a deal, I guess, is what I'd say. But just like water on the shoulder, on water under the bridge, and keep moving. But most people will be receptive in my experience. If you have language barriers, that's another thing. Even then, I think people will be interested. A lot of folks will be interested in just understanding where you're coming from. But I think coming with Know Your Rights materials in multiple languages is a really good way to at least say, hey, I'm here to support. in whatever way possible. So I think that's a really great way to react. I guess while I'm unmuted, I could take on this next question of what's the right thing to do if you're a bystander, you see somebody being taken by ICE. And I'll just share really briefly. I think one thing beforehand, there's a lot of trainings going on, and maybe even through Adopt a Corner, you can try to engage in one of those trainings to get like a good detailed training. And that's not to say it's super complicated, but it's good to prepare because these are moments of high stress moments that if you're in the moment, you want to be able to be prepared so that you are able to say the right thing and do the right thing. What I'd say is to start filming if you have a phone from where you're not interfering, but where you can potentially communicate with people and then film what's happening. These videos are horrific. They are taking a toll just to watch them, but this is what's happening in the community. So one, we need to document, but those videos could also be evidence of rights violations that are essential to lawsuits that are being filed or going to be filed. And finally, what can you do? If somebody doesn't have any contact with anyone, it's really hard to find that person if we don't know certain information. But you don't want them to be shouting out all that information as they're being arrested or may not have time. So the first thing I'd ask is there an emergency contact that we can get in touch with? That if you're recording, you don't have to like sit and write it down. It's going to be on your video. And that would be the first person to contact. If they don't have anyone, which sometimes can be the case, I would try to get a name and a date of birth, and nothing more than that, and work from there to try to identify and find folks. But definitely record. It's our right to record the police and to record ICE. Yeah.
So the other question, if we don't have a day laborers in our area, should we still approach Home Depot? That's what we're suggesting. We again, there could be different tactics. If you are already part of a group, you can suggest to your group like, hey, one thing we could do right now to stand in solidarity with the immigrant community or immigrant workers could be to send a letter, to take a letter to our Home Depot manager. It could start just like that. I know that in some of the groups that we've known within NDLON literally started with a letter signed by community members, could be a group of teachers, could be anyone, right? That takes a letter to the manager, letting them know that you stand with immigrant workers and the Home Depot should stand in solidarity and ensure that their ICE is not allowed in their stores. If you're feeling like you want to escalate, listen, show up with a sign. We have some signs. I forgot to drop the link here, but we have some signs that you can print and just get a little group and go to the Home Depot and stand outside, call the media. Right now, it really is all hands on deck on ensuring that they're feeling the pressure. And I'm just gonna have a parallel comparison here. There was so much that could be done on Tesla that I saw people around the country, showing up to Teslas. Like some Tesla dealerships had a handful, some had hundreds or thousands of people. So in this situation, it could be a very similar circumstance in which Home Depot knows that people are paying attention everywhere in the country.
And the stores have no issue on a whim calling their security or police on day laborers who are their own customers, oftentimes in their parking lots, saying, "Oh, this is our private property, so get out of here," forcing workers to go to just a few steps away to the sidewalk. And so, yes, maybe there are like logistical difficulties to blocking armed agents, and I agree that's very scary. But the Home Depot hasn't said anything about the hundreds of raids that have happened on their parking lots. And probably every single day or almost every single day since June 6th, federal agents or bounty hunters have gone to a Home Depot parking lot to arrest workers. So the Home Depot's silence is glaring, and they made billions of dollars off of these workers.
Well, I think we're at the 15-minute mark of the hour, and I just want to thank everyone. I'm going to pass it to Nancy, but just to kind of summarize everything, as you all can see, it's definitely a moment to inform and educate everyone on how climate disasters, first of all, second responders, right? Remember, who are usually the second responders? It will be in many occasions, immigrant workers who are showing up to ensure that we are what's the word I'm looking for? That we're
Resilience.
rebuilding our communities. That's the word, rebuilding our communities. And in this moment, they are the same workers that are being targeted and being sent to detention centers and being separated from their families. So the tools that we provided here are just a way for you to be in solidarity, to ensure that as we continue to fight against climate change and for immigrant rights, that we do it with solidarity, with love, and with and informed in how we can show up in that way. I'm gonna leave it there, and I'm gonna pass it to Nancy. Thank you all so much for giving us this space.
Thanks so much, Erika and Cal, for today's training. Thanks everyone for being here. I know we're a little bit above the hour, but appreciate everyone's patience, questions, just really honoring the work that you all are doing, and for showing up today and bringing this information, this solidarity to your loved ones, friends, or family. We'll be sending the recording of this workshop, the slide presentation, and the resources that were shared this afternoon. Inspired and compelled to adopt a daily recorder. I dropped in the chat once again that link to get involved. As Erika said, be it a letter to a manager, go out with the signs. You can print some of the signs. We're going to share that Google Drive folder, but we'll have more to come, and appreciate all of you. And I hope all of you have a great evening. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us. Thanks again, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.